All right, let's give folks another minute and then we will get started. All right. On behalf of the Armenian Revolutionary Federation Eastern Region Central Committee and the AYF Central Executive, I'd like to welcome you all to this program tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining. The subject matter for tonight's event is the Armenian Quarter in Jerusalem. I'm sure all of you are aware of the hardships our brothers and sisters have been facing in that quarter over the last few months that we've been aware, but this has been a saga that's been ongoing for nearly 2 years. Our Armenian nation is at a crossroads today with the genocide in Artsakh, and then our nation, our homeland, being at risk every day of attacks by Azerbaijan and Turkey. We're facing existential threat in the homeland. Unfortunately, that existential threat is also been manifested in the diaspora as well. And one of our most ancient Armenian communities is today at risk in Jerusalem. The topic we wanted to cover today is this one, to understand first and foremost what the Armenian community is like in Jerusalem, how things operate in that quarter, what's happened over the last couple of years, and then some of the legal avenues that the community is pursuing in order to secure its rights over those lands that belong properly to the Armenian people. The program is going to be an introduction by my AYF Enged, Matt Girardi, who will introduce the speakers. The speakers will then take turns talking about the issues I've just laid out, and then we'll have Q&A. Please send me your questions directly in the chat. We will only take questions in writing. And then once the presentation is over, we will ask the panelists to respond to your questions. So please send them to me, Ani Jalesyan. You'll see me on the list, and we'll get them all set up to go. With that, again, thank you for joining us, and I'll pass it on to Matt.
Thank you, Ani. My name is Matthew Girardi. I am a member of the Central Hai Tahd Council of the Armenian Youth Federation Eastern Region. I am pleased to be joined tonight by three very special guests who I will introduce in order. The first is Ungervikin Demirjan. Ungervikin is a chairman of the ArF Jerusalem Lazian Gomide and longtime ArF and Hominet member. He's a graduate of St. Tarkmachant School and has studied political science. Ungervikin is a businessman and has led the Jerusalem ArF's coalition's effort to protect and defend the Armenian Quarter. We're also joined by Setra Agbalyan. Setra Agbalyan is an artist, an activist, writer, a fourth-generation descendant of the esteemed Balyan family, one of the founding families of Armenian ceramics in Jerusalem. He has studied economics in France and Armenia and explored the world of ceramics in Spain. Setrag is a co-founder of the Save the Armenian Quarter movement, dedicated to defending and safeguarding the Armenian Quarter of Jerusalem. He's contributed to scholarly discourse on Jerusalem Armenians through several articles. And finally, we have Ani Nazarian. Ms. Nazarian is an associate attorney in both litigation and transactional practice groups at Kirkonian Dajani LLP, specializing in commercial fraud matters, international transactions, and foreign sovereign immunities litigation. Her knowledge in cybersecurity and data privacy law supports the firm's practice in cross-border transactions and international dispute resolution, as we are seeing here tonight. Ms. Nazarian previously worked as a legal extern for the World Bank, where she specialized in big data and anti-corruption. She graduated from Southwestern Law School in 2022, where she focused on technology law and entrepreneurship. As a law student, she served as a member and a fellow for the Negotiation Honors Program, president and board member for the Armenian Law Students Association. She's also a member of the legal team for the Save the ArQ campaign, working to defend the Armenian Quarter. Angirvikin, Setrag, Ani, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I will start and hand it over to Angirvikin, who will speak a bit on the history of this community. And for those of you who do not know, a background on what's going on, and then we will transition to Setrag and then finally to Ani. So Angirvikin, without further ado.
Thank you, Matt, for your nice introduction. Շատ գուզեի հայրենով ընենք այսօրվա Zoom-ը, բայց ըստ երևույթին հայրենով ընենքն է, most of them they're gonna understand, but եթե անգլերեն ընենք, ամեն մարդ մի հասկանա, so let's go do it in English. So, as Ani said, today's topic is the Cow's Garden, Goveru Bardes, as everybody knows. But before entering in the details, I wanted just to give you a small background about the Armenian community who is living in Israel, in Jerusalem, basically. So then we can go on with Setrag and Ani. So the Armenians started reaching this area after the adoption of the Christianity. So they started coming by groups, hundreds every year. Usually they used to come during the Easter, stay here for 10 days, 15 days, and then they used to leave. So some of them used to stay here, work, and after that they started buying houses around the Armenian convent. And these Armenians, we call them the Kakatsis. The Kakatsis were, from that period of time, coming and getting established here. So the second wave of the Armenians, we have it during and after the genocide. They started coming here, looking for a shelter. And I think 4,000 or 5,000 of them, they reached us. And they were located in the Armenian convent. So this is the difference between the Kakatsiner and the Armenians who came after the genocide, let's say. Now let me tell you a little bit about the old city of Jerusalem, which is divided into 4 quarters: the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter, and the Armenian quarter. So the Armenian quarter is the smallest in these quarters. We're sitting on the 17% of Jerusalem, of the land in Jerusalem. And this is what I'm talking about now. I'm not talking about the Cow's Garden, because the Cow's Garden is the 25% of the 17% that we have. Just in order to make it clear. If we lose the Goveru Bardes, we're gonna shrink another 4 or 5 percent. I think we'll stay on the 10 or 11% as a total. So if you see at the map, I don't know if you have it. I sent it to Ani. So if you look at the map, and you see the quarters, the 4 quarters, you will see that the Muslim quarter, is around the Dome of the Rock. The Jewish quarter is around the Wailing Wall. The Christian quarter is around the Holy Sepulchre Church, and the Armenian quarter is around the Armenian convent. Okay? So today we have about 1,500 Armenians who is living in Jerusalem. We have another 500 Armenians living in Tel Aviv, Yafo. We have another 500 Armenians living in Haifa, I think, and another 3,000 or 4,000 Armenians which came in the last 20 years from Armenia and the Soviet countries, let's say. Let me also give you some what we have inside the convent also. So the inside the convent, we have the Turkmenchad school, which I graduated from the Turkmenchad school. We have, I think, 82 students over there. And then we have the seminary school, which we have 35 students over there. We have the Mardigyan Museum, the Gulbenkian Library, Jinishan Clinic, the Patriarchate's Print House, and the main church, and the manuscript house, which is the Tserak Radun. We have all these in the convent. And then churches, we have mainly the St. James Cathedral, the Holy Archangel's Cathedral, and the Holy Savior Church. So this is more or less about what's going on here. Now you have a little bit idea about our community, about the location. So before passing the baton to Setrag, I just want to enjoy.
Okay.
I just want to talk about Setrag and Hagop Jernazyan. They are the co-founders of the ArQ, Save the ArQ movement, which they started 2 or 3 months ago, when the demonstrations started being in the Medspag. So talking about the ArQ, I just want to say the ArQ. I just want to say that it's not Setrag and Hagop alone. They have 6 or 7 cabinet members. Can we call them committee? 4 from each side. I mean, 4 from the Watchman Club, 4 from the Hometman Club. So they are combined together, and we're all of us. We're like supporting them by everything, and this is what we're doing on the field now. This is what happened. Each one was staying in his club. Let's say, let me just also add, the clubs are also in the convent. There's the Hoechman Club, and there's the Hometman Club. And in the Armenian Quarter also, there's the Parisirads Club, which the club is for the Kakatsis, if you remember, the Armenians, the old Armenians, let's say. So that's it. I think I can pass the ball.
Thank you.
Start.
Thank you.
Then we'll discuss, we'll go deeper while asking the questions, maybe.
Just, I want to add a few more important contributions that Armenians have made to the city, you know, throughout our 1500-year-old presence in Jerusalem. Of course, the biggest Armenian wave came during the genocide, but also during the Crusades, and we had 5 Armenian queens of Jerusalem, which include Melisandre, Arda, and Morphia. And the first printing press, for example, of Jerusalem was in the Armenian Quarter in 1833. And also many other craftsmen, pioneers in crafts, in arts, in jewelry, like in Gerviken, in ceramics, like my family, and in watchmaking, I mean, you name it. So the contributions of the Armenians to the city has been immense. We're not just here living our own lives. We have contributed immensely to the development and the shaping of the Holy City. And of course, the Armenians have equal rights. Apart from having a separate quarter, which again shows you the importance of Armenians, where you have Christian, Muslim, Jewish, and Armenian quarter, who, by the way, is located on the highest point on Mount Zion, which is the most strategic point of the old city. We also have equal rights in the Holy Sepulchre, equal to the Latins, which is more than 1 billion worshippers, and equal to the Orthodox Church, the representative being the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, which is another few million, worshippers. So the nation of Armenians, which is about 10 million, has equal. There's no 25, no, it's equal between all the denominations, and the Armenians are one of that part, 1/3 of that equality in the Holy Sepulchre and the Nativity Church. So how did it all start? What happened? 2 years ago, basically, so there were two deals regarding the Cow's Garden parking area. One was strictly for the parking area. Ani will go further into the details of the deals, but the first deal was with the municipality, and it was just a usage agreement for 10 years, which allowed residents of the Jewish Quarter to park in that parking. But 1 year later, in July of 2021, an illegal and treacherous, if you will, land deal was signed regarding the Cow's Garden and other areas which Ani will develop, that were given to a Jewish Australian developer by the name of Danny Rothman Rubenstein for a period of 98 years. And for a laughable, sorry for the bias, but for a laughable sum of $2 million as a lump sum and $300,000 annual rent, which is ridiculous by all standards, I mean.
And 5% of the profits.
Yeah, 5% of the profits, unless there's a loss registered in the hotel, then it's deducted from the rental agreement. So this area, to understand the old city of Jerusalem, is comparable to Times Square, New York, to Piccadilly Circus in London, to the Champs-Élysées in Paris. So you do the calculations and let us know what you think about that monetary compensation or financial compensation. So it started, they signed the deal. It was signed secretly. It was signed under very suspicious circumstances. And the community was not aware, the Holy Synod was not aware, the General Assembly was not aware, and a lot of people that should have been aware were not made aware of this deal. And the news started slowly leaking out, and little by little, the priests stood against it, majority of the priests, and slowly the community as well. So the biggest, I mean, community uprising was from April of 2023 until October 2023, so of last year. And a lot of people ask, why did it take that long for the community to move, for the community to say something, for the uprising to happen? So the first thing you need to understand about Armenian and Jerusalemite Armenians is that we are very dependent on our church and our patriarchates, and all of our houses, almost all of us lives in homes that belong to the patriarchate. A lot of us work in the patriarchate. Our children go to the school, in the Armenian school. So it creates a very difficult situation to go up against the institution that protects you, that gives you shelter, that takes care of your needs, and that basically allows you to survive in this crazy city, if I may. And the second thing is that we had no details, we had no information about what exactly was going on. We were lied to repeatedly by the different representatives. So we didn't have the whole picture. So
rumors started
exactly
here and there. But
Jerusalem,
when we faced the reality, we saw the reality was much worse than the rumors that we used to hear.
Yeah. And usually it's the opposite in Jerusalem.
Usually
you have a rumor, and it's usually just 10% that's a part of it. So you see the map of the Armenian Quarter. So the historic Cow's Garden actually goes all the green area that you see up until that wall. There's a green dotted line. That's the historic Cow's Garden. It's 19,000 square meters, 19,000 square meters, and it includes the parking, the gardens, private parking, seminary hall, and the whole seminary as an institution is located in the historic Cow's Garden. So not part of the deal. The deal is in green. Again, Ani will dwell more into that and develop about the deal. So what happened? In April, we started, so the rumors started coming out. So we knew that something was going on with the parking, but the rumors started going out about 5 family homes. So the threat of eviction faced by those families, a private garden, even the seminary hall, which is where we commemorate, I mean, the Armenian genocide events. So it is truly, I mean, unfathomable for someone to have given all these areas. And that's when the community started getting more and more tense. And that was also the period. So in January of 2023, Baret Yeretzian, former priest, was relieved of his duties as the director of real estate. So there were 3 signatories to the contract: the 99-year lease, the 98-year lease. It was the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Armenian Patriarch Nurhan Manukyan, the Grand Vicar Sevan Gharebyan, and the real estate director, which was back then Baret Yeretzian. In January, he's relieved of his duty and replaced by Father, now Bishop Goryun. And in April is when, in May, actually, beginning of May, the priest Baret Yeretzian is defrocked from the St. James Brotherhood and from his priesthood, and he's given 1 week to leave Jerusalem. Now, also to add to the lack of, uprising by the community for the 2 years, there was also a bit of an environment of fear because of the way Baret Yeretzian used to conduct his duties. It was very intimidating, and a lot of people were scared to go against him because he would threaten them and so on. So the environment and the ambience was not, the best it could have been. So when he got defrocked and asked to leave the convent, and the community started learning about all these small details, which were in fact very important, that's when, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. We refused to allow the defrocked priest to leave because we wanted the Patriarchate to demand answers from him, to keep him there and use him if they need him, if they need additional information, because he was allowed, first of all, to empty his offices alone in January when he was relieved of his duties. And second, he was allowed to take whatever he wanted from his home and leave the country. And there might have been valuable information there. So that's when the first major protests started. And that's actually, I think, how a lot of Armenians were made aware of this issue. The videos of him leaving the Armenian convent were shared worldwide. We didn't want him to leave. We had women, children, young people, about 300-400 people were present in front of his house, protesting, singing Armenian chants with the Artsakh flag, with the Armenian flag. But eventually the police was allowed to come in. We have no confirmed information whether the Patriarchate formally allowed them to, but they were allowed to come in, and slowly started increasing in numbers, where they were 2, and then they became 10, and then the IDF joined, and it was a very tense situation. And the movement decided that the best thing would be to come to an agreement with the police, and we demanded that we would, line up and allow him to leave and have his sort of walk of shame and humiliation. That was the best way to protect the community members. As I said, there were a lot of women, children, and we did not want violence to follow and anybody to get hurt. So that's when he got defrocked, and for 6 months, the Armenian community started, the movement organized protests on a weekly manner. Sometimes it wasn't exactly weekly, but for 6 months, there were a lot of protests inside the grand courtyard of the Armenian convent, which is to the right of the green area you see on the map. That's the Armenian convent. Most of it is to the right of that area. And that's where the protest started, with a very clear and specific demand: the cancellation of this deal. These protests were not against the Patriarchate, they were not against the church, they were against this deal, the signatories, and because it was a treacherous deal, and it was also a movement for the preservation and the defense of the very institution we're talking about, and the Patriarchate and the church. This is something that has to be made clear, because some people want to twist this story and make it community against church, this is not the matter at hand. The matter at hand is to go against this deal that threatens the very existence and presence and future of Armenians and of the historic Armenian presence in Jerusalem. So after the protests on October 26th, the Patriarchate finally, after mounting pressure from the media, from the Armenian organizations and institutions, even within the community, we had 2 statements released with all the representatives of the clubs, Hoyechmen, Hometmen, Barisiradz, and everybody was on board to go against this deal because it was an existential threat. So on October 26th, the Patriarchate formally canceled the deal. I mean, they sent a letter of cancellation, which meant that the opposing party should have come to the negotiations table. But instead of doing that, of course, they resorted to intimidation tactics and started attacking the community. So for 2-3 months, I think that's when the community got attacked by first bulldozers and then armed settler groups and residents of the Jewish quarter. And then a mob of 30 Arab men was sent by the company to try and invade the land. And they were repeatedly stopped by the Armenian community. The community and the church. The clergy members joined us, the seminarians joined us, even the patriarch himself, who was one of the signatories, came down and stopped the police from forcefully evacuating us and removing us from the territory. So during those 2-3 months, we even took full repossession of the land. So we took back all of the cow's garden and the parking area in order to protect our community, our church, and to stop these attacks and let the courts decide. And that is exactly what happened. So in the end of December 26th, the Patriarchate formally opened a lawsuit against the deal and against the private company. 2 days later, we had the most violent attack. I think most of you might have seen it. Masked people came, started throwing stones. I mean, this was an unprecedented, event for Armenians. Something you have to know is that the Armenian Quarter is one of the most peaceful, the most secure, the cleanest. It is where, coexistence is at its best, where everyone passes by, whether Jews, Muslims, Christians, tourists, without any problems whatsoever. And that's actually what made the company underestimate Armenians. They thought that we're a peaceful community, that they would come with their guns and their bulldozers, and they would scare us away. But it had the exact opposite effect. The Armenians became more united than ever, even within the church, even within the community. And we stood and resisted those attacks and took back what is rightfully ours and decided to let the courts decide whether this deal is valid or not. So after the Patriarchate's lawsuit, the community also filed a lawsuit to complete kind of the Patriarchate's lawsuit and to make crucial arguments that the Patriarchate would not or even could not make. The community felt obliged to also go to court in order to strengthen the Patriarchate's case, but also in order to give a voice to the community in this affair that is very, essential to us. So this is basically on the ground what's been going on.
And we can give some more explanations when we go.
Yes, of course.
Live.
So that you see with your own eyes. We've been camping there, as you all know, for more than 100 days, 24-hour surveillance. And this is the situation as it stands. So I will pass now the mic to the floor to Ngeri Ani Nazarian, who will hopefully talk about the legal battles. And also, before we get into that, a huge thank you to Kerkonyan Dajani, to Karnik Kerkonyan, to Garo Ghazarian, to Ani Nazarian, to Elizabeth Al-Dajani, to Arman Tatoyan, and to Daniel Seidman, who have all been working pro bono, who have given, hours and hours that would have been otherwise billed in the thousands and tens and hundreds of thousands of their time. We could not have reached where we are today. We could not have had the strong standing and position we have today as a community without the tremendous work that is done by these lawyers, mainly behind the scenes, outside of the spotlight. But their work, is essential, and we would not have been here without you. So big thank you to you all, to all the legal team.
Thank you also to Jack Yerigian. Also, he's one of the biggest donors, I think, for the ArQ.
Biggest, by far.
Biggest. Yeah, exactly. So thank you to Jack Yerigian also.
Who's an ex-Jerusalemite, who was a Jerusalemite who was born here and raised here and later went to LA and Glendale.
I think he was ex-Hometman member.
Yeah. That's not my area.
These things.
So yeah.
Okay. Let's not fight and pass the mic to Ani Nazarian.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ngervigan and Satak. That was beautifully done. And appreciate your kind words. Thank you, AYF, as well, for organizing this. I'm here representing the legal team for the Save the ArQ community group. We're led, as Setrak said, by international attorney Karni Kerkonian, and the attorneys on the team are Elizabeth Aldejani, Garo Ghazarian, the former human rights defender for the Republic of Armenia, Arman Tatoyan, and myself. We also have our local council as well that Setrak had named. I hold this organization, the AYF, ANC, and whatnot, so very close to my heart, having worked and interned for the ANCA before my law school days and knowing the strength of the Armenian Youth Federation. AYF was one of the first organizations that met with our youth leaders, Hakop and Setrak, early on, before the attacks. And that comes as no surprise because this organization is always known to put the nation above all, and not only when the nation is under attack. Jerusalem, while home to a small population now, is just that, it's home. While it's Anker Vigen's home, Setrak's home, Hakop's home, it's also yours. It's ours, and our home today is facing the gravest threat in its existence. Jerusalem is one of the very few places that we actually have status. It's where our existence is beyond having a certain number of elected officials on council or streets named after us. As Anker Vigen and Setrak had mentioned, our presence in Jerusalem goes back to our Crusader days. It's where in 1833, Armenians established the city's first printing press. Our Armenians in Jerusalem then went on and welcomed our Armenian genocide survivors. It's where our survivors gave birth to generations of Jerusalemites, where after facing the most gruesome crimes imaginable, they developed a community, they loved, they prayed, they built schools, and they preserved our language. So as I go on to explain the legal matters, I just want you to keep that in mind. It's not some far off land that you'll occasionally hear about in Zartung or 301 Arm when the community is under attack. It's also not just for Easter or any other religious holiday. It's home, and just like Armenia and Artsakh, this is a home facing a very serious existential threat. I'll talk to you about two legal matters specifically. The first is the notorious lease agreement, which is why we're here today. The second is one of the ways the community is fighting back. So to the first one, in 2021, as Setrak briefly mentioned, a lease agreement was signed between the Patriarchate and Zana Capital, run by an Australian businessman named Danny Rubenstein. He later brings on another gentleman by the name of George Warwar. To be clear, this lease agreement is dangerous, and I say that with no exaggeration. This agreement puts 25% of the Armenian Quarter up for grabs. It endangers 5 Armenian homes, the Patriarch's garden, the Patriarch's private parking, the hall of the seminary, where the community hosts many events, including the Armenian Genocide commemoration event. And yes, to reiterate, this agreement would evict 5 Armenian families from their homes. The lease is for 49 years, but it allows for renewal for 49 more years. But here's the catch. Only the lessee can renew. This makes the lease, inevitably, 98 years long, something that can outlive all of us mostly on this call. This vital and critical land is up for a mere $300,000 a year. Considering the location, Setrak explained it, but considering the location, of course, it's important for both the Armenian Quarter and the religious community overall because of the connection to Mount Zion. So this should upset everybody. I mean, ask yourself what kind of real estate in the United States would go for $300,000 a year. And what's more is that the agreement allows for adjacent use of lands with no clear definition as to what that means in the contract. This agreement also violates the internal bylaws of the Patriarchate, where it has not received the approval of the Holy Synod to have been able to lease out this property for this long. So to put it plainly, the lease agreement, which is effectively a sale at 98 years, has put the entire corridor under threat. Now, it's no secret that there are rumblings of Israeli settlers, from the attacks to meetings with Zana Capital leadership. This is all public. Settlers are also known for their true hatred of Christians and Muslims. They've been seen spitting, urinating on our own walls, and attacking our own people. So if this lease agreement moves forward, I'm not sure how we'll be able to convince families to stay. I mean, you lose your community parking lot, the hall, the gardens, the homes. It becomes difficult. And when it's too difficult, it makes sense why people would leave. Now, let's say the Armenian Quarter empties out. Let's say Armenians, except maybe a handful, stay. What might happen? We might lose our praying rights to our holy sites in Jerusalem. We might lose more land in the Armenian Quarter. We might lose our existence in the old city. And I'm just not sure how we can stomach calling ourselves the first Christian nation if we no longer have a presence in the whole old city at that point. But fortunately, the Jerusalemites are fighters. They're not defeatists. And aside from their endless nights in the Cow's Garden, sleeping 24/7 in a very cool clubhouse, I might add, they have stepped into the legal arena officially. Thanks to some critical research done by one of our legal team members, after sorting through historic documents, the community has discovered that the property is held in a trust specifically for the benefit of the Armenian community. This trust was established by our ancestors, and the mechanism it's held under is particularly honored in the Old City, and more importantly, it's legally enforceable. What the community has filed is called a declaratory action, which just asks the court to recognize that the property is indeed under this trust. This action requires that the court review the historical documents submitted to them and make that decision. If the court does find that it's under the trust, the next step would be to assess if the transaction would be for the benefit of the Armenian community. You can imagine what the answer would be to that one. But this is just one step forward. It won't be our only step. To keep this land intact, to keep our Armenians there and allow them to thrive, we need to fight. And we do this by not accepting a lease agreement, by not being complacent about illegal land grabs, and not accepting a world and future where our leaders can sign over land without considering the community members it affects. As Karnik Kirkonian, who is the lead attorney for the community, frequently says, rights are not self-activating. They're not just given to you. You must advocate for your rights yourselves. You must use all the tools available, and the community really is just doing that. And to my final point, I always get asked how to help, and this is exactly what you can do. Host events like this one, share, raise awareness. The community has done an excellent job, Hakop and Setrak particularly, in building coalitions and creating allies where we may not have had them. But we need all of you in the diaspora to start getting eyes on the Armenian Quarter. It limits the attacks, but more importantly so, it supports any pressure the community has exerted on politicians, both in the US and overseas. Find what you can do and do it. Raise awareness. Don't leave the thousands of Jerusalem Armenians alone. There's enough of you in the diaspora that can make noise. And frankly, as we've learned time and time again, we're all we've got. Thank you.
Ani, thank you so much. With that, we are beginning to sort through the different questions from the audience. So I believe that we are going to put all of the speakers back onto a panel very quickly here. And then we are going to start going through the questions. So with that, the first question is to Angervik and Setrag. You alluded to this a bit earlier. Could you please describe how the Armenian community in Jerusalem is structured? So in other parts of the diaspora, the church and the community, manage their communities. How does it work exactly in the Armenian Quarter?
So the structure, in 1863, just to go a bit back, Sultan Abdulaziz II made the Ferman, which basically regulated, it's called the Armenian National Constitution. It was accepted and it regulated the relationship between the church and the communities. Because the religious leaders that we had, the patriarchs, the Catholicoses, weren't only religious leaders, but there was also political and social leaders. They decided to create councils all over the world, which would include community members in the church affairs and in the church institutions and administrations. That was unfortunately, it still works in all of the countries in the world with Armenians. As you all know, your local councils have church members, but also community members. But it was unfortunately removed by the British in the 1930s in Jerusalem in order for them to control and for it to be easier to control basically a few individuals rather than a whole community and a whole mechanism of checks and balances. So the way it structures, before that, the patriarchs of Jerusalem were actually named by the Patriarch of Constantinople. But it changed and it became only internal, and the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem became very independent and it had no authority over it. And it works as the following. You have the Patriarch, which is basically the supreme leader. With the Patriarch, there's the Holy Synod. The Holy Synod is comprised of 8 priests. Seven priests and the Patriarch at the head, but there's also the Holy Synod president. And there's also the General Assembly of the St. James Brotherhood, which is basically, if you look at it, Patriarch is the president, the cabinet is the Holy Synod, and then Congress, if you will, is the General Assembly of the St. James Brotherhood, which has, depending on the period, anywhere from 28 to 35 priests in it, and at least 5 bishops. There used to be at least 5 bishops in Jerusalem. Why? Because first of all, bishops are stronger, because bishops are only ordained, by the way, that's when the Patriarch actually needs the Catholicos, is that the bishops are ordained only by Catholicoses. And so they cannot be pilonazurgt, they cannot be removed of their bishopness, if you will, by the Patriarch, whereas the normal priests can be defrocked by the Patriarch very easily. So this is the basic structure. Apart from that, there is no community saying, there is no community members on the administrative affairs, not the real estate, not the financial. The community plays a role through its different organizations and political parties. The 2 political parties are the ARF and the Ramgavars that are present in Jerusalem, and also their respective clubs, Hoyechmen and Hometmen and Hoyechmen, and the JABU, Jerusalem Armenian Benevolent Union, which, as Inger Viken mentioned, is the Kahakazi. So here you have one ARF, one Ramgavar. And by the way, we're looking for a 4th person to play Blot. So if there are any candidates, no, just a joke, I'm going to get massacred for it. Anyway, so that's the basic structure of the community and the way it works, and that's the basic structure. So
That's
and
very
by the way, as Ani said, so they did not go through the proper internal bylaws of the Patriarchate. So neither the Synod nor the General Assembly approved this deal, and according to the constitution of the Armenian Patriarchate, they had to be approved. Anything above 25 years had to be approved by the Synod and the General Assembly.
Got it. And that segues really well into another question that we got, which was, why did the Patriarch, or why was this agreement even signed in the first place? Obviously, Bade couldn't have made this deal with his signature alone, right?
It's the $1 million question. Maybe English can answer it. Why did they sign? Yeah.
Why did they sign? Okay, as we all know, the main architect of this whole deal was Baret Yeretzian. He was the one who was meeting with the investor. He was bringing him to the convent, inviting him, sitting him till everything was cooked, and he just told also the Patriarch about in the beginning, it was a build when you enter the parking on your left hand, 6-star or 7-star, they said?
7-star, they said, even though it doesn't exist.
Okay, 7-star hotel, they're gonna build 7-star hotel. And the concentration of the Patriarch also was on the 7-star hotel, and that was it. We were laughing about it when we were saying that rumors started flying. And then when we reached the reality, we saw it's not only the hotel, it's 5 houses. There's another there's another part of land on the backyard. There's the parking of the Patriarchate. There's the whole of the seminary. I mean, that was the biggest shock, I mean, for us. So Baret, he was the one who used to go to the Patriarch and tell him that this is the best deal that we're going to do. We're going to make millions out of it, millions and millions. And so the patriarchate also signed, but he signed also. I mean, let's make it very clear. 3 people signed. Nurhan, Sevan Gharibian.
He lives in front of your club, of the Hometman Club. Sorry.
Sevan Gharibian, the patriarchate, and Baret Yeretzian. The 3 of them, they signed. It was very secretly. They signed it very secretly. In the beginning, nobody knew about it. After a couple of months, we started hearing, and the community started getting, I mean, not comfortable with all what's happening. And the hardest part was to control the community, because everybody was, I mean, insane after hearing this kind of rumors. And in the end, it wasn't a rumor, it was the reality. And this is what we're facing now. This is exactly what we're facing.
Yeah, and if I may add, there were also obviously underlying reasons as well. Corruption involved, bribery involved. Some pressures, we're not sure, they're not confirmed, but some pressures by the government perhaps, because, you know, this land, since 1967 and the occupation of Jerusalem and so on, it was always eyed by the different municipalities of Jerusalem, mainly Teddy Koleg, who was a 5-time mayor of Jerusalem. They always tried to exchange that land for favors or get a hold of that land, and they couldn't. And to even go back to the Ottoman Empire, Jamal Pasha wanted, one of the architects of the Armenian genocide, wanted to build his summer house on that area. And he couldn't, even though it was the Ottoman Empire back here. So just to understand what we had to put through to keep this land, the blood, the sweat, the energy. And this land was acquired over 700 years. It took to acquire this land. And the main source of money was given by pilgrims who used to come and camp there, put their caravans there, by Armenian philanthropists and benefactors, by community members who bought parts of the land and gave it to the patriarchate. So it was a huge national effort to buy this land and to keep it, which again shows you the importance of this land. It's also, as I said, the highest point in the old city. It's stuck to the ramparts of the old city. I mean, the strategic location cannot be underestimated. The value is priceless. If you ask any surveyor to come and give you a price for this land, they will leave and tell you, I cannot give you a price for this land. This land is priceless. And it was also a huge issue in the negotiations between Palestinians and the Israelis during the Camp David negotiations in 2000, where the Israelis wanted to incorporate the Armenian Quarter inside the future Israeli state, and the Christians and Muslim quarters would remain in the future Palestinian state. And that is when Yasser Arafat famously says, I am Arafatian, and I will not allow for the Armenian Quarter to be split from its sister quarters, the Christian and Muslim quarters. So this was the biggest issue that made actually the negotiations fail, along with the right of return of 5 million Palestinian refugees. So in order for you to understand where it's placed in terms of importance, political importance, that's about the level of it.
Wow. And the Patriarchate owns the entire Armenian Quarter. This is not leased land from the Israeli state, correct?
No. The Armenian Quarter is mainly owned by the Patriarchate, but also a lot of houses were to the Karakatsis, as Engerviken said, the old Armenians that came during the 5th century upwards till the Crusades. And a lot of them, when they died, they left their homes and their properties to the Patriarchate, because it is an institution, it is a church, and it's usually easier and in more safe hands in an institution rather than individuals. But obviously these past events have proved that unfortunately wrong.
Absolutely.
And nobody owns this land. I mean, the patriarch or the patriarchate, they are in charge of the land.
Sure.
They are in charge of the land, and you know, it's not their own. Something can be your own when you buy it. Mm-hmm. When your father gives you something, that is yours. Okay, I can understand, but something that is, you didn't buy it, you didn't make it, it's not yours. You're in charge now on these lands, and that's it.
They're the custodians.
The custodians,
Yes.
exactly.
And that's exactly what the Waqf that Ngeriani explained is. The Waqf is that it's a trust, it's an endowment for the benefit of the community. And the trustee is the Armenian Patriarch. I mean, de facto, because they're the representatives of the community. That's how it was, I mean, decided.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I was about to ask, Angaruhiani, could you go into a little bit more about the trust in detail?
Oh, yeah.
How much detail do you want? I mean, I can only say so much, to be honest, but I know that the common question for me has been, what's the likelihood of success for the community in filing the suit?
Please.
I,
Yes.
of course, can't guarantee a success neither in the United States nor Jerusalem, but what I can say is that back in June 2023, there was no chance of stopping the deal, but today the legal front has moved up quite significantly. We have possession of the land and a lawsuit that addresses the fact that the Patriarchate did not have authority to do this without the community's consent. But I know Sachak has more of the historical knowledge of the walk.
Yeah, it's a document from 1574 from the Ottoman period that basically Patriarch Andreas, Bishop Andreas, who was the Patriarch of Jerusalem back then, bought the land with his personal money. And also in the bylaws of the Patriarchate is anything bought by clergy members with their personal money can only be registered as a waqf, as a trust. And trusts cannot be sold or leased, especially not without the consent of the beneficiaries, which in this case are the Armenian community of Jerusalem. So he basically left this to relatives and then eventually to the Armenian Christian community in Jerusalem. It says it in black and white. Of course, Ottoman documents, they don't have like square meters and exact dimensions, but we have all the necessary information that proves the exact location of the land, and that is how it became a trust. Also, another point to keep in mind that Israeli courts and Israeli law accepts precedent documents such as Waqf documents and other British Mandate and Ottoman Empire documents as valid land titles and land deals and land documents, because a lot of the lands acquired here were acquired centuries ago and their owners hold those documents as proof of that ownership.
Sure, that's very helpful. I would say that brings up another question that we got here, which is, how is the relationship of the Armenian community with the government of Israel at this point?
The government of Israel. Can you come again, please?
Yeah.
Yes, I was saying, how is the relationship and the trust between, at this point, the Armenian community of Jerusalem and the government of Israel while this is going on? We understand that this is a very fraught and high, a very tense time, to put it mildly. Is there a relationship there of trust and of mutual understanding, or is there unfortunately a bit more suspicion?
So it's complicated, you know. First, it's complicated in the point of view of occupation and East Jerusalem and international law. So it's quite a complicated issue, complicated question, but obviously, as for all Armenians, we have a very difficult relationship with the Israeli government, especially keeping in mind that they provide 70% of Azerbaijan weapons, and they kept arming Azerbaijan when they were committing a genocide and ethnic cleansing in Artsakh. So that already has a soured relationship between the community, the church, and the government of Israel. Second, the Armenian community of Jerusalem tends to be neutral, and throughout its history, it has tried to maintain its neutrality in order to protect itself. And because, of course, first and foremost, we're one of the oldest, we're the oldest Armenian diaspora, but we're also one of the oldest communities of Jerusalem. And we do not need a feel to identify with any of the national movements or any of the empires that came. We are indigenous to this land. So we are first and foremost Armenian, we are Christian, and we are Jerusalemites. And that is the definition of Jerusalemite Armenians. It's limited to that usually. Of course, certain individuals, me, myself, for example, I consider myself Palestinian Armenian. Others consider themselves Israeli Armenians, but the bulk of it is Jerusalemite Armenians, and they stop there, and they don't want to go further into those issues and get involved in the conflict. But of course, also as a nation who's gone through genocide and who keeps going through these tragedies, we sympathize and identify immensely with the Palestinians in this case. Because of course, with the Jewish people, as someone who went through the Holocaust, but as people who went through Holocaust, we find that we have a higher moral obligation to stand with the oppressed. And in this case, the oppressed is clearly the Palestinians. So of course, we sympathize with them. We are against the occupation and the humiliation and dehumanization of the Palestinians. And our main goal is always to achieve peace and harmony and coexistence in the city. Actually, this battle for the Cow's Garden is not only an Armenian battle and a Christian battle, but it's also a battle to keep and preserve the unique, diverse identity and character of Jerusalem, the multi-ethnic, multi-faith, multicultural, because that's what makes Jerusalem special. And Jerusalem is a city that is thrice holy for the three Abrahamic religions, and it should be respected. All the religions and the faiths should be respected, and we should be able to live just like we've lived, albeit with some massacres, pogroms. Of course, that's the history of the world, but relatively, there's been a peaceful coexistence here. I mean, even with Armenians, with our Jewish Quarter neighbors, there are neighbors, direct adjacent neighbors. We've had great relationship with them. They always feel safe here, we feel safe there, and all the other quarters are very respect immensely the Armenians for their contributions, but also for their stance as a bridge between all the different peoples here, and as a way to kind of bring the different communities closer together.
Sure. I will say one of the things that has been disturbing watching from abroad is that we have seen many scenes now of discrimination against Armenians. Have attacks against the Armenian community increased since the Cow's Garden issue became public?
The attacks mainly increased, the discriminatory racist attacks mainly increased with the arrival of the far right wing
After the elections, the last elections, yeah.
This was, I mean, this is the most extreme and right-wing government Israel has ever seen. And so these settler groups that come from hills around Jerusalem that don't understand the complexity and diversity of Jerusalem, who just got a carte blanche and total impunity to just basically do as they please, and started increasing their attacks, their spittings on our priests, on our community members, their desecrations of tombs and cemeteries. I mean, there's been a great increase in attacks. And then, of course, the attacks on the Goberu Bardez, which were some coordinated and orchestrated with settler groups and with residents of the city and with different communities of the city, in order exactly to create that rift and division between the different communities of Jerusalem, which they utterly failed, I might add. We still have good relations with our Jewish Quarter neighbors. They still park as per the agreement with the municipality. They still park. We control the parking, but they still park inside our parking, and they respect us. The Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, it goes the same for all of them. They all know who Armenians are, what they're doing here, and why they're here. And there's no space for this company to create more tensions between us and the other communities.
Good. We have heard also that the community guards this, I'm putting in, air quotes here, leased territory about 24 hours a day. Who coordinates all of that, and who is guarding the territory?
So I was talking about the Save the Ark movement, and we were talking about the 8 members. Yes. But I want to tell you also that the secret that these people, they have, this movement, let's say, they have 40 or 45 members of the Armenian fellows, which is living in the convent and the Armenian Quarter. So this is how it goes. Now 4 or 5 people all the time are guarding there. If anything happens, it's WhatsApp message.
One alert,
which is the red alert. Within 5 minutes, you'll see 30 or 40 Armenian fellows over there facing. After 10 or 15 minutes, you'll start seeing like 50, 60. After 1 hour, you'll see the whole community at the Goveru Bardez. This is what's happening. I mean, for the last 4 or 5 attacks.
Yeah, it actually started, the WhatsApp group started with the attacks after the elections.
Yeah.
When we were targeted by settlers and religious extremist groups. and slowly turned into a big community group. We have over 500 members in it. So most of the community, I mean, barring children and others, are in that group, and it's coordinated all through WhatsApp. I mean, all our communications. Also, before the court filings, we used to have 10, 15 members sleep there. But as the court started, everything on the ground is supposed to be frozen. The status quo cannot change until there's a verdict. But the police still has a lot of bias in that, and we still get pressures from them. But all in all, it's quite stable right now, and they cannot do any unilateral actions of repossessing the land or attacking us. But we're always prepared for any scenario, and that includes the worst case scenarios.
We were laughing about it, and me and Cetrag, that what if suddenly during the Zoom we get the red alert? So we have to disappear. We have to go. We
will take you with us.
We have to go over there. We said maximum we'll leave Ani Nazarian to go on with the because we have to be there. This is how it was for the last 4 months. I mean, even in my daughter also laughs about it. Whenever I'm missing, so she knows that we got the red alert. So that's it. We're walking, we're going all towards the Govero Bardes. And this is what was happening for the last 3 or 4 months.
And that's another thing, I mean, that's worth talking about, is the unity that came out of this. I mean, if there is a silver lining, that definitely is it. The unity that we only dreamed of, especially the younger generation, also the older, some people in the older generations, but we always dreamed of that unity. And when you see it with your own eyes, I mean, the young guys defending the land, protecting the land, the families bringing food, the church giving food as well and helping us. I mean, truly, it was true Armenian unity. I mean, and none of that cliche, stereotypical slogans.
Yeah,
the community is more united than ever. I enter Save the ArQ. I see people that haven't talked to each other for 30, 40 years sitting next to each other, maybe saying even hello, how are you? You know, so this divide that we've had, like in all Armenian communities, you know, we're not a very united bunch, unfortunately. But as Armenians say, I hate the saying, because like when it reaches now, because it reached the heart and it was almost going to take it out. That's why we had no other choice. I mean, this picture you see here of me and Ngerviken sitting with the flags behind, this is unprecedented.
Okay, just let me add that in our community, we have always in a good relations between the clubs and the club's members. But the difference was each one was working in his club, doing his things with the activities and the scouting and all these things. Each one in his club. So this thing made us come together, start meeting together, making meetings, planning things. As I said, the Save the ArQ members are half and half. There's Momentman members, there's Hoichman members, and this is how it goes. I mean, now we are in a very, very close, how they say, the closest since the last 50 years.
In a circle of trust.
In a circle of trust.
Sure. And that actually gives me a very good, you mentioned Angaruhia Ani. So let me get her in here, as a matter of fact, in that, could you give us an update of where the case stands and whether there's a timeline that we're looking at here? When can we expect to start hearing something definitively about the fate of this community in the Cows Garden?
Yeah, so as I had mentioned, they did file the declaratory action. The next steps would essentially be, so they brought in all the parties related to the lease agreement, because everybody has their own claims to that land, of course. And we're expected to hear a response from them. I'm not an attorney locally, so I can't speak on the exact procedures as far as timing goes. But if you follow Save the ArQ on Instagram, you'll get updates as soon as they happen.
I mean, we can give you rough deadlines. Usually, whenever a case is filed in courts over here, the opposing parties have 2 months to answer to that case. And then I mean, the process takes long. Probably the first hearing would be somewhere in September because the courts are also closed in August here. So usually these matters can take anything from 2 years. And then with appeals and all the process, I mean, the Greeks went to court for 18 years. So it is kind of also a war of attrition, which we are prepared for, and we will go all the way till the end. But hopefully, not hopefully, we are quite confident that our case is stronger than the Greek case, and it has a lot of silver bullets, maybe, or it has a lot of strong facts and arguments that might make this case go faster than 18 years as the Greeks did. But we're, as I said, prepared for any scenario. But this is the rough deadlines that you can expect.
Got it. That's very helpful. In talking about going quick and surprises, though, I do want to wrap up the Q&A. I want to, first off, thank all of the audience for sticking with us, even though you weren't able to directly participate. We tried to get as many of your questions in as we could. That being said, we do have a little bit of a surprise here in that we know that Setrag and Viken are actually going to physically take us to some of the land that we have been talking about today. So we ask for you all to stay with us as they physically transport us there and give us a bit more perspective on what we're talking about here. So, gentlemen, I will turn it over to you at this point as you take us and be our tour guides here for the moment.
Yeah, we're going to give you a tour. So do you, is the setting like this good horizontally? Yeah, it's suitable for everyone?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks great. Setrak, while you set that up, I am getting questions directly in my chat as well. And one of the most common ones is how and to whom folks should make financial contributions to. I'll drop the Give Butter link in the chat for folks to donate. Again, the donations go to our local council. The international team does not take money for their work.
Thank you, Ani.
Oh, okay. So we're just leaving the Homenetmen Club, okay? And now I will flip the cam and give you a small tour of inside the convent, okay? So this is actually the Lusara Bedaran, where the Grand Vicar stays. So if you want to shout things, no, I'm kidding. This is the time. No. So as you see the Hometman logo, hold on. Maybe with better lighting. No, there's too much light on it. So you can't see the logo. That's the Hometman logo. These are the ancient walls of the Armenian Quarter. We're in the small courtyard. This is the Bezdik Pag, we call it. And now we're gonna head, so down there and over there are the residential areas where the community members live. And we're gonna head to the common places, mainly the main courtyard of the Armenian convent. As you see, it's typical alleys of the old city. It's also the most serene and tranquil quarter, as I said, and convent. So this is the grand courtyard of the Armenian convent. This is actually where all the protests took place, in the grand courtyard. Here you have the back view of the Hometmen Club, and that is the Hometmen Club's tricolor, I mean Armenia's tricolor flag. Oh no, it was replaced recently, it's the Artsakh flag. So our symbol of victory, resilience, even after the defeats, Artsakh is still a symbol of Armenian history, Armenian presence, Armenian resistance and resilience. And no one can take that away from us. So the protests were here. That's the Hoyechmen Club, my club. June. And this is actually the patriarchate, part of the patriarchate. So whenever we'd be shouting here, we were sure that the people involved were hearing us. This is also the location of the first printing press of Jerusalem, 1833. It was by Yesai during the time of Patriarch Yesai der Garabedian, who was, by the way, an excellent photographer. And because he became patriarch, he couldn't practice anymore. So he founded a school of photography, which was also the first school of photography of Jerusalem. And the first studio of photography was also Armenian, Grigorian, in 1870s, if I'm not mistaken. So over there, you also have that black door is the residence of the clergy. And through that other small door, you will reach the library, the museum, the school, and the Holy Archangel's church. And by the way, there's another church up there, which is the Surptoros church. As Engerviken said, it's also where all the manuscripts were kept. We have over 4,000 Armenian manuscripts, especially from Toroslin, and they are the most valuable Armenian manuscripts. And we're second to the Madenataran in Armenia. And the third is the island of San Lazzaro in Venice. So here we might lose signal because there are pretty thick walls, as you can see, but this is the main entrance and exit to the Armenian convent. Sorry. And this is the St. James, the entrance to the St. James Cathedral, which houses two St. James, actually, St. James the Great and St. James the Just, two apostles of Jesus. The main one is, of course, from Santiago de Compostela, where they do the main pilgrimage of Christian Catholics. And his head is actually located in the St. James Cathedral. So now we're going to exit the convent. We might lose service over here, okay? Guys, can you hear us?
Yes, Setrag, we can hear you. You broke up for a moment there, but we're all good.
Okay, we're just waking the guard up. By the way, the convent closes at midnight, opens at... Yeah, it's an important piece of history. Behind this water fountain is a plaque by one of the Mamluk kings, if I'm not mistaken, that actually said arms will be cursed for 7 generations and so on. So now we will open the gate. Armen is our gatekeeper from Armenia. And this gate is 300 years old. 300 years old and at least, and it's made out of full, iron. It's very hard to penetrate. And here you have Deir Mar Yaoub, Deir al-Arman in Arabic, Armenian, and in French, Couvent Arménien Saint-Jacques. So this is the main entrance of the Armenian convent of Jerusalem. And this street is the Armenian Patriarchate Street, which, by the way, has been called the Armenian Street for at least 2,000 years, because when the Roman army entered Jerusalem, it was the 10th legion that entered through Jaffa Gate, which is over there, and they named this street Via degli Armeni, so Street of the Armenians. As you see there, we have the flags of the of Armenia and of the St. James flag. And this is the Armenian Patriarchate. This is where the Patriarch resides. These walls are the offices. So here you have the Armenian Patriarchate, the Armenian Patriarchate Street. To the left is the Armenian convent, whose walls, by the way, were completed by Patriarch Grigor the Chainbearer. They called him the Chainbearer because back then the convent was very indebted and the Patriarchate, and he put chains around his neck And he went all over the world, paid off all the debts, and even bought some land and finished the walls of the Armenian convent. This is the seminary, and you will see the included parts once we come from the other side. But this is where they study, learn, and sleep. The seminarians, as Enger Viken said, about 335 seminarian students. Let's go. Your tour guide for the night. So here we are still on the Armenian Patriarchate Street, and we are heading to the Cows Garden, the famous Cows Garden. This is historically the Armenian Gardens. There are, by the way, maps you will see inside the HQ. There are maps from 16th, 17th century upwards that all name this area as Armenian Gardens in different languages, in German archives, in French, British, Ottoman, you name it. It's a bit cold. So if my voice
But
starts
lucky that it's
trembling.
not raining.
Yeah,
It was
actually,
raining all day today,
yeah,
but now for our luck or for your luck,
yeah.
the rain stopped.
We were afraid of the weather, but it's fine. So this is the another entrance to the Armenian convent, which leads you to the Armenian Museum and all those other parts, such as the library. The school, both the library and the school, date from the 1920s.
Yeah.
And here
This is the entrance of the.
you see the flags. This is the entrance of the Armenian Quarter parking lot and the Cows Garden area.
Okay.
Okay, so as you see, the backdrop is the ramparts of the old city. Those illuminated walls are the walls of the old city that date back from Suleiman the Magnificent, 15th century, 16th century, and obviously beneath it are Byzantine walls beneath the Ottoman walls. But look at this piece of land, just so you understand. So behind there is still the convent, separated by the street is the Cows Garden parking lot. Now we will get a bit closer. So maybe some of you saw some of the barricaded parts of the Armenian parking lot. That is after we were attacked in the beginning. We advanced in the territory and liberated, and I use my words carefully, and we liberated a big part of the land. And then a few months later, we proceeded to repossess and liberate the remaining land. I mean, just if you can imagine the sheer size and location of this place. I mean, look at these walls. These are the ancient old city walls. That's the Dormition Abbey in the background. Beautiful lighting, actually. You're very lucky. So now this is the barricaded part that was barricaded after the November 5th armed settlement groups attack. And we succeeded. And this I call Mount Lele Tepe. Maybe some of you know it was a hill that we lost during the April War of 2016. And it has the Artsakh flag on it and the cross, of course. So this rubble was made by the bulldozers that came to attack us. And of course, where they destroy, we build. We even have a tree here, which was used as a Christmas tree because of the war in Gaza. Christmas celebrations were canceled. Only the religious left. So it was a very hasarag, as they say.
Okay.
Yes. So these, behind this wall with the tricolor flag, are the 5 Armenian family homes. And these are the people who face, I mean, eviction if this deal goes through, or if we intervene in order to stop these encroachments and land grabbings. So this, as you see, is the rubble and the destruction they caused. We actually have plans to plant trees here, olive trees, and other Armenian trees as well, in order to show that, again, wherever they destroy, we will build. And this land, by the way, it's called the Cow's Garden because it actually had cows. I told everyone to bring back the cows, but it's not a very popular idea right now. So this land, actually, we used to feed off of this land, the community. It had pastures, it had different animals, different trees, and it was a main source of nourishment. And this is also, we will send you, if you follow our page, you will see we have historic pictures of pilgrims here, refugees, and even some refugees from the earthquake of Spidak. So here is the rubble. That's the parking area, which is about 7,500 square meters. If you include the houses, that's 9,000 meters. And then you get the private garden of the Patriarchate behind the headquarters. That's the headquarters. Behind it is the private garden of the Patriarchate, stuck to the walls of the Patriarchate, to where the Patriarch sleeps. So when the Patriarch says he wasn't aware of the full extent of the deal, it kind of makes sense sometimes that no one would actually sell their own backyard, especially when they're still living there. And they'll end up with, groups or violent groups over there. And that's the seminary hall, that whole building. So all this area is included in the deal. Now we're heading, everything is clear, yeah? We're still on?
Absolutely. Hear you loud and clear.
Now we are entering the headquarters.
A little bit messy, but it's our headquarters.
Messy, but bearing all the important flags, of course. So here we put up maps, the old historic maps, which show that these are called Armenian gardens. Look, Armenisky Garten, I don't know, that's probably German. We have the different calendars from the different clubs. We're still lacking commitment, I think. Oh no, it's right there. Okay. It's Parisirads we don't have. So this is the kitchen. Yeah, let's show. Ayo, Ambay Man.
Hello, from Jerusalem. Բեդիգը 24 ժամ արդեն օրական հոս է։ Իր հետ ունի 3-4 հոգի, որ միշտ վրաներում մեջ վարգած գլան եւ դարձում եկա տելևիզիոն տոդեսնեն։ Մոդեցի surveillance ոստեղեն արդեն ամեն ինչ հայտնի է։ Anything happens արդեն SMS-երը կսկսին աշխատել եւ դղակը կսկսին հավաքվել։ So this is how we're protecting.
By the way, Bedig is here 24/7, and he's already been to jail probably 3-4 times, 5 times because of this issue. He's one of our most resilient and strongest fighters, fighting for this land. And again, we talked about Save the Ark, the committee, the clubs, but a lot of the boys here are behind the scenes, away from the spotlight, and they also do the tough work of sleeping here, staying here, under the rain, under the snow, under the winds, and nothing will stop us from defending our land that is rightfully ours. It has been acquired through the blood and sweat of our ancestors, and it shall remain Armenian. It will remain Armenian. This is our kitchen. And George is listening to us from both sides. And this is the small living room. Armenian homes have the living room for the family and then for the guests. This is our guest living room. Salona, they say salona. Salona mian hyrerune. I've never actually sat on the furniture in our salon. And this is the dining area, cards area. It's a makeshift camp, but it's this is the incarnation of our unity. This is where it all happens. This is where the different clubs, even the clergy members, some, and seminarians unite and talk together and drink together and play together and defend and fight together. This was, I mean, built by the Armenian activists, by the Armenian young people, and it was built, I mean, in a very quick manner. We improvised almost everything, and slowly it became a home.
I think you can wrap it up.
Yeah, I think yeah, tell me.
This is incredible. First off, thank you so much. I guess my last question here, and I'll try to close them out, is first off, we stand in such solidarity with you. In addition to moral support and PR, how can we help the men who stand guard 24 hours a day? And second off, a little bit more of a philosophical question. You know, what does a thriving Armenian community in Jerusalem look like? What does the future of this community look like for you?
So as Ani said, the awareness thing and all of that is very important. Other things you can do is contribute to the Legal Defense Fund, because apart from our pro bono lawyers, which I mentioned, we have two lawyers here, local lawyers, Samir Shed and Itan Peleg, one Israeli Jewish, one Israeli Arab Palestinian, that help us on our case. They're paid, of course. They're the ones that do the work locally, and we would appreciate any help you can. I mean, we will send you the link. Maybe you can share it with all your members.
Please.
Of course, also come visit Jerusalem. This is also your home. This is the home of all Armenians. And up until 1920s, we actually used to have 10,000 yearly Armenian pilgrims come to Jerusalem for Easter, for Christmas, for all the religious celebration. Even without that, Jerusalem is worth seeing, and you should come and see it with your own eyes and understand the importance of Armenian Jerusalem and understand the wealth we have here and the cultural wealth, the historic wealth that Armenians have in this city. As for your philosophical question, I can write a thesis about it. But healthy, vibrant Armenian community looks like, I mean, first of all, unity, again, between the clubs, between the church and the community, between the patriarchate and the community. Equality, I mean, a bit of decision-making for the community as well wouldn't hurt. Nothing too extreme, just so that we're aware of what's going on, so that we can help and contribute to the efforts of preserving our history here and developing it. I mean, you know, what we have here, Armenians can live like Kuwaitis, basically. We can have our own water wells. We used to have 300 water wells in the Armenian Quarter. None of them are functioning right now. So we would have our own water sources. We would have our own agriculture. We have a lot of open terrains. We can use that. We would have our old age home where the old people would take care of the land as well and of the crops and of the agricultural land. We can even do renewable energy in order to be also energy dependent, energy sufficient. The Armenian community of Jerusalem can be self-sufficient in every way you can imagine, be it food, shelter, energy. And we hope that one day that vision we don't hope, we are sure that that vision will become reality. And we want a victory. I always say this and I will reiterate it. We want a victory for the Armenian people. We've been going through defeats and tragedies, especially during these past years as well. And we hope that our victory, which we will have, I don't want to be too confident, but at the rate we're going and with the unity we have, we will have that victory. And hopefully that will give hope and light to all Armenians across the world. This will be, again, the light of the Armenian people shall come from Jerusalem. And we will give you that light at the end of the tunnel in order for all of us to go towards that light and to finally have a prosperous nation, a prosperous diaspora, and work together for the betterment of our future and of our culture and language and heritage.
Thank you, Setra. Very well said. with your example in mind, we will do just that, and we will keep this land Armenian. Thank you all so much in the audience for joining. Thank you to our gracious
Thank you
host.
guys for
Thank
being
you,
with us
Vegan.
almost 1.5 hours.
Thank you.
And thank you to Annie also,
Yes.
Diaspora, that she was the one who connected us, I mean, and she was the reason why that this thing happened. We thank all of you guys.
And thank you to Hoita.
He's saying that. I didn't say anything. Yalla. We'll see you guys.
See you. Peace out. Stay safe. And we'll see you in Jerusalem.
We'll see you in Jerusalem.
Next year in Jerusalem.
Exactly.
Thank you. Kişer pari angerner.